This exhibit talks about the origin of life, as life itself is a great mystery for all of us, and our scientists are trying hard to find out the origin and the possibilities of life which was evolved during the process of evolution. So this exhibit talks about the possibilities which scientists have probably find during their explorations in the oceans. They have seen that there are certain extreme environments where the life could have evolved. So these extreme environments are found in the oceans and a deeper ocean depth. The life which are originated or the life which evolved or surrounds to these extreme environments has given a clue to the scientists that this might be a possibilities where the life could have evolved. Also, we have certain fossilized informations, fossilized samples, which also gives us the clue about the origin of life. These fossilized information is not in the actual fossil samples, but they are just like the samples which can be seen on the hard surface, hard sedimentary rocks. These small impression over the hard sedimentary rocks gives the clue that life might have evolved in microorganism form, and these samples which you can see in the exhibits are known as the stromatolites. These stromatolites are the small impressions which are formed by the microcellular life on the hard surface, and over the period of time these impressions are being covered through the mud or through the crust of another layers, and these layer by layer depositions has been entrapped, and after the excavations the scientists find out the impressions, and this gives us the information that life could have evolved through this micro structure or microorganism life forms. This is the microorganism life. So this exhibit whole in totality is trying to give the insight about the origin of life, and once we know that the life has evolved in the microcellular form, so we have the curiosity that how this life has been diversified. So the another sections comes to that how the simple life or the micro life has been become a so complicated forms, and which gives the later evolution of different species. This exhibit talks about life simple to complex. As we all knows that all our life is made up of cells, and these cells, how these cells has got evolved. So at the primitive stage, if we see that the cells are single cellular form. Since in single cellular it is not very complex, it lacks certain elements which we are presently known. So how these simple cells get diversified into the multiple cell? So this exhibit gives a glimpse about the cellular life evolutions, how the single cell which we call as the prokaryotic cell, and how the prokaryotic cell further get replicated, and how the elements of cell gets evolved. So we call the complex cell as the eukaryotic cell. You can see that in the prokaryotic cell and the eukaryotic cell there are multiple differences. In the prokaryotic cell you cannot see the mitochondria, because this is a simple cell. It does not have that the mitochondria function. It only has the outer cellular structure as well as the nucleus. But in the eukaryotic cell you can see that there are nucleus, and it also have the property to replicate, and it can do multifunctional aspect has been associated with the complex cell. So this exhibit gives a glimpse that how the simple cellular life gets formed into the complex cellular life, and it further gives us the conclusion that how these multicellular lives get diversified into number of species. So this exhibit one by one, if you touch these sensor points, you will see that there are what is the content of the prokaryotic or single cellular life, and what are the content of the multicellular or the complex cellular life, and you can see the location of all these elements inside the cell, and which can easily identify by the visual impression as well. If you see the simple cell, it is only having the outer membrane and very few elements, but in the multicellular life you can see there are membrane, and along with that there is a huge nucleus, there are so many mitochondria bodies are there, lysosome is there, so there are multiple elements which helps to get multifunction from the cells itself. So this exhibit definitely gives provides a curiosity among the visitors as well, that how the life origin has been made through the cell, and how the simple cell goes to the multicellular functions. This entire section of the gallery is dedicated to show the contribution of one of the famous naturalists, or we call as the father of evolution, Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin, as we all knows, has been remembered for his contribution to develop the theory of evolution. This section is highlighting some of the glimpses and some of the highlights points from the Darwin's discovery and Darwin contribution. So this section gives us the information about the major expeditions that Charles Darwin has made through the HMS Beagle. So the young Charles Darwin has travelled from the England, which is known as the Plymouth. From Plymouth he took some number of people accompany the Charles Darwin, and they have started an expedition to explore the coastal lines through the globes. And he has started with the aim that he should explore that how the life was found on different continents. So through the journey of 5 years on HMS Beagle, Darwin has explored many life forms, and he collected many samples of the fossils, and through the fossilized evidence he comes to a conclusion of number of principles which we presently itself is a basis for the further evolutions. So one of the major contribution which Darwin has made through this expedition is the exploration which he made on Galapagos Island. Galapagos Island was very spectacular about the variety of life which was only found over on this island. Darwin was amazed during that time that there are so many species which was nowhere found on any other continent or any other island, but it was only specific to this particular island. So he was curious to know that why the life was strict to that particular island only. Darwin has took lot of fossilized samples. He took lot of information about the geological locations of those fossil samples. He observed many creatures which was unique to that particular island, and out of the creature which he explored is the Darwin Finches, which we known as which was further given the clue about the adaptation or the natural selection. So Darwin has seen that there are many birds who are coming to the Galapagos Island. They have different beaks shapes. He has found and he has explored Darwin finches. We call it the Darwin finches, and he observed many finches which have different shapes of their beaks. So he further wants to make a conclusion that why the shapes of these beaks are different from others. So he, through the process of his exploration, he comes to the conclusion that due to the favorable conditions which were there on the island, the shape and the adaptability of this particular species is supported by the environment. So there are 14 species. If you can see, once you press this switch, you can see there are many species which have the habit of taking fruit as their food habit. So if they eat the fruit, the shape of the beak is of certain kind. And if they have the food habits like they will take the cactus, so their shapes is of that nature. So based on the food habit or the conditions which were favorable on that particular climate, the nature itself has given that particular shape of the beaks. So based on these evidences, based on these fossilized information or the observation which he made on the island, he given many theories about the suppose one theory which was more prominent is the theory of natural selections, as well as the theory of adaptation, how the species get adapted, and those who adapt to that particular environment, they survive, otherwise they have to wipe out from the environment. So these particular sections is dedicated to the Charles Darwin, his theory, his publication which was main highlight the contribution which he made throughout the journey of HMS Beagle, and what are the information he has collected that was properly documented in the publication Origin of Species. So we have the visual information in the form of a documentary which was published and which are in public domain, and we are showing, and visitor can get a glimpse of the Darwin contribution in the theory of evolution. This exhibit is on cosmic evolutions. When we get into the gallery on Hall of Evolutions, the basic storyline starts from the evolution of our existence. So once we know about the existence, then only we can talk about the how the evolutionary process further expands. In the process of understanding the evolution, we starts with the how the matter came into existence. So these, we all are made up of the matters, we all are made up of the matter which have the evolutionary history. So when we see from our past, we know about the Big Bang phenomena. Big Bang happens and the matter gets expanded, and through the interval of time we can see how the different celestial objects like our Milky Ways, our stars, our planets, how they get into the shape which we now know. Before, when we go into our past, we will see that there was a big explosion happen in our universe, we known as the Big Bang. And when we see that after the Big Bang, the explosion, there are huge amount of matter comes out of it, and that matter gets settled and it takes certain forms of celestial objects, like the evolution of our stars. The first star, how the first stars came into picture, thereafter the stars, then the galaxy formation, and there is a sequence of these evolutions. So from the stars to the galaxies to the cosmic expansion further accelerate, and it gives the shape of our solar system. And through the solar system we goes to our unique planet which we call as the Earth, and why the Earth only supports the life. So this is a sequence, this was the connecting link to understand the theory of evolutions and the process which takes place in our past, and which also gives us a clue to step into our future also. So this exhibit is having a interactive slider mechanism. You can just slide from one end and you can see with the visuals or the visual information that how at a certain period of time the expansion happened in our cosmos, which gives the shape to our stars, our galaxies, our solar systems. So this entire exhibit, this entire section of the gallery talks about the beginning phase of the evolution or from the universe point of view. Homologous character. This exhibit is dedicated to know about the human ancestors, as the human always try to find out about their past. So this exhibit talks about certain similar characters which we shares with other species. There are, if we see the human anatomy, we can see that there are certain pattern of our bones which are interconnected to our body. And if we see the anatomy of different species, we can see that there are certain similar way of connection in the bones. Like if we see in the human, in the cat, in the whale and in the bat, we can see that there are certain similarities in the bone structures, but still the functions of all these organs of different species are different. Like human hands are used for holding, in the same way the legs of the cat is used for walking. We can see the anatomy of these two have certain similarities, but still they have the different functions. So through these kind of informations, the scientists have understood that there are certain characters which are similar, but still they have different functions. So through this similar construction of our bones, we can go to a conclusion that there might be certain ancestors, or maybe the humans comes from a certain species. So from which species the human came into existence. So these are certain curiosity points where the humans wants to know that who are our ancestors. So this exhibit shows certain homologous characters or homology of different species, which gives us a conclusion that we share certain characters with other species. Like if you see that this is a bird and this is a bat, although the bird and bat wings looks similar, but they have although the construction, if you can see that the function of the wings of bat and wings are same, but their constructions are different. So we do not call these as the homologous characters, they are the analogy. We can draw the analogy from the bird wings, but if we see the bone structure, we can see that there are certain characters which are similar but with different functions. So those characters are known as the homologous character, and which takes to a next step to understand our human ancestries. Human ancestors. The exhibit talks about the ancestry of we as a human. We all wants to have a certain pre-assumptions that we came from the apes. The human wants to know that whether we came from the apes or not. So this exhibit highlights some of the key information about the human ancestry. As we already told you that there are certain characters which we shares from other species. So there might be certain anatomical connections or from through which we can get a clue that we have some ancestors. So here in the exhibit we can see the human lineage, how the human lineage evolved. So we can see that there are many split in the human lineage chart. One goes to the gibbon, other apes we call it the great apes, other goes to the gorilla, then we comes to the bonobos, then chimpanzee, then the humans. So we can see that based on the characters which we closely shares with other apes, we can see that the chimpanzees is one creature from which the human shares about 98% of the characters. So we can get a information that we are close to chimpanzee, but we cannot surely say that chimpanzees are our ancestors. So this is the information about that how humans gets evolved and what is our lineage, from where we comes to the final form of human being, which are the total group of Homo sapiens. So this exhibit will give some fossilized, some replicas information about the different species like the apes which we known as the orangutan, gorilla hand, and different organs of the gorilla and gibbon. You can see the shapes of all these different apes are much similar to human beings, but we cannot comes to a final conclusion that we came from the apes. So this information shares the human ancestors. This section of the gallery gives the information about the hominid evolution. As we all knows that human beings are the variants of hominid. Hominids is a large section of human evolution, and if we see that this particular display of different skulls belongs to hominids. But if we see the evolution of these hominids, we will see that it starts from the first hominids, which we call as the Australopithecines. Australopithecines group further gets evolved into the Homo groups. So the ability of human beings to walk on two legs and the ability of the human beings to walk, to be straight on the two legs comes in a sequence of evolutionary process. So if we see the human history chart, we can see that Australopithecus group is having the skull which is not very similar to the Homo group, but it have certain kind of similarities, which we can see that through the process of evolution, the similarities or the differentiation in Australopithecus group and the hominid group. So we can see that this is the Homo sapiens, which is present, we known as the Homo sapiens, which we all are. And if we go back into this group, we can see that the shape of the skulls and the information which was collected through the fossils, we can see there are difference in the skull constructions, the jaws, and different kind of anatomy of the skulls. So this particular display in the gallery gives a information about the interconnection between the different hominid creatures from Australopithecus to the Homo sapiens as present man. This section of the gallery is on early human life. As we are going into the gallery, we have seen different sections, and one curiosity which we want to know about our humans is to know about our life. This section of gallery is on early human life. As we know that human life in earlier times is not as simple as we now. The life of the early humans was very difficult, and they have to fight for their bread and butter. The food, the availability of food, the availability of shelter is not very comfortable was not very comfortable for the human being. But during the process of time, during the process of evolution, the human gets civilized. In the exhibit, we have shown the 4 major sections or major pathways, path break discovery, which helps to civilize the human being. One of the discovery is the life which the human being used to live was on trees. We know that the early human being was living on the trees. They eat the fruits, and once the fruits of the trees gets over, they have to comes down and they have to find some animals or some creatures which they can eat. So initial era, human has to eat the raw flesh. With the raw flesh, lot of diseases they was acquired. So in this process, they have also evolved many stone tools. Through the use of tools, the hunting becomes much easier for them. They have started tools to hunt the animal, to remove their skins, and to make their life better, to get survive for a longer durations. So the uses of tools also one of the path breaking journey in the human history. And when they have started using the tools, they have comes to cook their flesh. So they evolved the fire. The evolution of fire gives them a civilized life where they can cook their food. They can use the fire for protecting themselves from the wild animals, and through the use of fire, the life of the human being becomes more comfortable than previous one. And thereafter, when we talk about the life, they further gets use of the caves some shelter they have prepared. They also started animal husbandry. They have taken some of the animals which they can domesticate them, and through the use of domestication they have started the farming, and through farming they further get civilized and their life become more advanced. And this was a journey which talks about how from the Stone Age to the present age the life of human was get transformed. So this section also shows some of the tools. These are the original tools which was placed here to give the visitor a glimpse that what the shape of these tools and how these tools helps the human to become them more civilized from their past to the present. Geological time scale. As we have seen in this gallery of Hall of Evolution, we have to know about the time in which we are talking. Since the evolution process is a huge time phenomena, it was not happened in a day or in a month, but it was happened through the series, through a time journey. And this particular information was well presented in the graphics form as well as an interactive format, where we can talk about the time, how we can know about the time where these all evolutionary process, all evolutionary happenings was taken place in our past. So we can see that the time was divided into certain kind of epoch, period, era and eons. And since the time was so vast that we cannot count in number of days, number of years, but this has to be counted in million years. It was the happening of million years. So from this representation in the gallery, the visitors can easily make an analogy or make an interpretation that since today we will, if we want to see the time, we have the watch. Through the watch we can see the time in seconds, minutes and hour. Through the calendar we can see the time in days, month and year. But the geology of earth, if we want to see, then we require certain kind of interpretation or certain kind of scale which can show the thousand of year time, millions of year time as well as billion of year time. So this particular representation in the gallery is talking about the timeline of the human history or the geological history of our earth. So in this entire gallery, when the visitors comes to see that the evolution, the process of evolution, how we know about the evolutions, these certain questions which every one of us wants to know, and this gallery definitely will give them a treat, will help the visitors to at least go through different processes, different happenings, different point of observations by different group of scientists, and what is their hypothesis, what is the conclusions, and how they can predict the future of human beings or the other life forms. So this entire gallery on human evolution, Hall of Evolution, is definitely be helpful for our esteemed visitors of Nehru Science Center to see the evidence based information through the fossils, original fossils. There are many original fossils which are placed in the gallery to give the glimpse of about past, and how the scientists or the special group of scientists like paleontologists, geologists, archaeologists, how they drive the information through these fossils, and they make the hypothesis or make the conclusions and make the further exploration to find the answers to our curiosity. And definitely we would love to get the feedback of our visitors through these exhibitions, and we will try to make more and more popular exhibitions to address the human curiosity in the form of these spectacular demonstrations. Thank you so much.